my years traveling as a musician, I have never seen the standing of the United States as low as it is now. Every human being I speak to throughout the planet is horrified by the current administration. We have become the laughingstock of the planet. We are feared and reviled. The president's lack of control, his violent temper, his thin and vain skin, together with his appalling lack of intellect, knowledge of history, and general misunderstanding of the world has forced the planet to reckon with a new mediocrity. It is a dangerous and deeply embarrassing moment in American history. Arturo Alfaro continues. The Trump-Pence regime represents the apex of American racism, sexism, violence, division, and fear-mongering. It is also the most repressive and fascist-like governance we've ever seen. Designed to keep the wealthy in their boardrooms genuflecting to their gods of money and greed, this regime perpetuates the lie of economic growth through financial genocide of the middle class and poor, all perpetuated by lies and misinformation. At a time of global crisis, these clowns respond with the America First rhetoric that will in fact bring tremendous pain to our shores. The Trump and Pence regime must be brought down immediately. A statement from the Advisory Board Committee member of Refuse Fascism, Latin Grammy Award winner, renowned musician Arturo Alfaro.
Okay, and give some love to Miles Soleil of our national future rock. Okay, y'all, so I emphasized this at the beginning, but I'm going to tell you again. In case you forgot, because you've been hearing a lot of beautiful words and a lot of big ideas, but also in case you came a little late, we are refusefascism.org. We are a movement for everybody, whatever political perspective you are coming from, however old or young you are, wherever you are born on this planet, whatever language you speak, whatever God you worship or if you do not worship, however you love or choose to identify, this is a movement for you if you refuse to accept a fascist America. So if that is you, make some noise. We are marching today in 24 cities. We were lied about. We've been threatened. Down in Austin, Texas, there are armed militias who have sworn they will come out and stalk our sisters and brothers who are taking to the streets. We are standing with them today. Am I right? We are saying we've got your back to the people in Austin. Am I right? And more than that, we are saying we've got your back to the people of the world who were terrorized and terrified by the Trump-Pence regime and his finger on the nuclear button. Am I right? So I want you to listen up. Our next speaker is bringing a message that's being delivered at every single rally in Cincinnati, in Los Angeles, in Austin, Texas, in Chicago, in Minneapolis, in Salem, Massachusetts, all over the country. We're delivering this same speech to let people know about this movement, to let people know how we plan to go forward, not just for one day, but a movement that grows. So we're going to have somebody come up who's been at the core of this movement, whose political insight and leadership and example has been instrumental in forging and founding Refuse Fascism and navigating all the challenges that we've encountered so far and all those yet to be encountered. He is the spokesperson for Revolution Books up in Harlem. He's a dear friend of mine, and he's on the advisory board of Refuse Fascism. Please give some love and tune in for Andy Z.
All right, how you doing? Are you ready to begin? Today it can, and it must be said that there are people in this country who refuse to be silent, who have stood up, with courage and conviction, and braved the lies and the threats of violence and death by fascist trolls. Today, we and people just like us in cities and towns across the country have overcome fear and uncertainty, recognizing the grave danger that the Trump-Pence regime presents to humanity. And we are standing together to say, this nightmare must end. The Trump-Pence regime must go. And in the name of humanity, we refuse to accept a fascist America. And we are rallying today to begin a new phase of the struggle, to bring about what millions of people ache to see, an end to a regime that imperils the lives of millions of people, a regime that denies basic rights, denies people's humanity and even their basic health. And yet its danger is far greater than all of that. Without exaggeration, the future of humanity and the planet hangs in the balance from what the Trump-Pence regime is doing. This is a regime that is playing roulette with nuclear weapons and that is denying science and climate change while discarding environmental regulation. Millions know and millions feel this horror. Who will end this nightmare? We will. So, give me a second. But now it's your turn to answer the question. Who will end this nightmare? It's only the determined struggle of millions of people acting together with courage and conviction that could drive this regime from power. And today, we are beginning a process of continuing protests that are going to demand this whole illegitimate regime be ousted from power. We are going to reach out to all sections of the people, spreading this everywhere, growing week by week and month by month. Listen to me. Week by week and month by month, we are not going to give up on this. We are going to build a movement that increases in size and determination. And we will not be deterred by naysayers, by cynics, by those who normalize, accommodate, or conciliate with a regime such as this. We are right to do this. The time is now. The hour is late. Our actions today across the country reflect the values and respect for humanity and the world that we want. And it's all in stark contrast to the hatred and the bigotry of the Trump-Pence regime and those who would defend it or stand to the side. And we have what we need to begin. Number one, we have an understanding of what it is we are fighting. This is not a normal presidency. This is a regime working every day to bring about an American fascism, manifest destiny, and American exceptionalism. A fascism wrapped in the Bible, taken literally in the American flag, saturated with racism, misogyny, and xenophobia. Number two, we have a plan to bring forward the hundreds and the thousands and the hundreds of thousands and eventually the millions of people to create a situation where this regime is forced from power. And number three, we have a plan for the next 2 weeks that will be a springboard so that we can work to change the calculus from what may seem impossible today to become a movement that shakes the political ground. For 11 months, there has been one outrage after another from the Trump-Pence regime. Outrages that assault the conscience and threaten the world, and in its very extremeness, fills people with anguish and anger, and that is the basis for millions to act on our demand. Can anyone seriously deny that the Trump-Pence regime is working to radically eviscerate the rule of law, bludgeon the truth, demonize and terrorize immigrants, disabled people, refugees, Muslims, deny that this is a regime that stigmatizes LGBTQ people, that tramples Native American people's rights, that threatens Black and Latino youth with more police brutality and mass incarceration, that threatens the environment and even more, including the students. that this is a regime that despises women, from the sexual predator in chief to a vice president and much of a cabinet who would return women to the Middle Ages without rights to control their own destiny. We act now because fascism gets normalized as it gathers momentum. Fascism gets normalized as it gathers momentum. While group after group gets demonized, others get by. They go about their daily lives, and the unthinkable becomes routine, and the abnormal becomes normal. And then, it might take only a single incident, intentional or not, for the hammer to drop. My friends, history has shown that fascism must be stopped before it becomes too late. And for those of you, or those out there who have thought that letting Trump's generals run the show would bring adult supervision into the room, now you see that you have a president and a chief of staff who denies the horror of slavery and the necessity of a civil war to end it. And today, November 4th, as Donald Trump stomps into Asia, 7 billion people hold their breath for fear of what he might unleash or put in place while he's there. All of this should make clear, painfully clear, that we cannot wait. We cannot stand by. We must fight from where we are. We must fight from where we are now. We must unite and struggle together to drive out this momentous regime. The hour is late, but the time is now. Now let's get down on the ground. Some people are going to tell you that we cannot do this, but they are wrong. This is possible. Last year, the South Korean people, starting right about now, took to the streets in demonstrations that took place at first every week, and then they mushroomed over a few months to politically engulf the whole country. It forced the removal of their president. They created a crisis of legitimacy, and on that basis, all kinds of previously hidden truths became revealed, and the people began to pour out. Cracks that had existed in the superstructure in society turned into deeper and deeper fissures, and more struggle erupted, and the legitimacy of the regime began to unravel. And faced with that situation, the powers that be in South Korea found the mechanism somehow to remove their duly elected president and call new elections by March. So understand, that was a smaller country, went from October to March. But some people are going to tell you that's South Korea, and the United States is not South Korea. Well, duh. In fact, the horrific danger and the horror of the Trump-Pence regime far exceeds that of the former president of South Korea, with therefore far greater potential to arouse broad and determined struggle. Look, our objective is nothing less than creating a movement from below to force the removal of the Trump-Pence regime. And starting today, we are calling on every person, every organization, every group to be part of beginning a movement of protest that gathers momentum, where people are out every day reaching out and protesting in waves. Every day there are new outrages from this regime and new divisions and conflicts among the powers that be. Republican senators are forced out of their party, but then they speak so little truth about the danger of Trump. Indictments, scandals, infighting. Our call to action, which everyone here should sign and get everybody else to sign, it says this, quote, our determination to persist and not back down will compel the whole world to take note. Every force and faction in the power structure would be forced to respond to our demand. The cracks and divisions among the powers that are already evident today will sharpen and widen. And as we draw more and more people forward to stand up, all of this could lead to a situation where this illegitimate regime is removed from power. Without it, it won't happen. How do we get where we need to go? How do we get there? Well, we start with the 2-week plan to springboard from where we are today. We're going to start with our march. We're going to show people on this march that there is a force now daring to go against the regime. We're going to be telling them we're ready to go now.
saying and signifying in every way to the people to join us, to join us, to join us, to join us to fight for the future. And then there are plans for different protests, speak-outs, rallies, outreach in most days in most cities. And Sansara and Jamel are going to tell you of the plans for New York, but I understand that every day you can find Refuse Fascism at Washington Square Park from 4 to 6 p.m. But now here, listen to this. The 2-week plan is this. There's 3 nationally coordinated days. This coming Wednesday, which is November 8th, which is the anniversary of the election. Take to the streets. This is no time to reminisce about the shock you felt last year. Go out to the high schools. Join protests in March. Let's move people from wearing not my president buttons to a situation where he really is not president. And everywhere we go, reach out and bring more and more people into the streets. And second in this plan, next Saturday, 1 week from today, November 11th, which is Veterans Day, at the end of Donald Trump's Asia trip, come out for major protests against the unconscionable way this madman and his generals have put all of humanity at direct risk of extermination. Take to the streets next Saturday with the lives of our sisters and brothers around the world in our hearts, letting them know that this narcissistic madman is not going to take down the world in our name. And then, the third thing on our national plan, 2 weeks from today, hit the streets, multiply the size of today's march in more cities with more people, more organizations saying together, this nightmare must end, the Trump-Pence regime must go. And all over these 2 weeks, there have to be a lot of different kinds of activities and protests and rallies and ways to organize. And the most important thing that each of you can do is to reach out and involve more people, hand out flyers, speak to groups. And look, we know that this is new for most of you. It's really out of the ordinary from what you've done in your lives. But there is nothing ordinary about Trump and this regime. These are times when ordinary people have to do the extraordinary. So on November 18th, we must have thousands more people get into a situation where every time there's some new outrage from this regime, which is going to be and has been every day, people must say, oh, what about that they must go movement? Maybe I should be a part of that. But look, I want to get down a little deeper in this before I wrap up. There are those who are going to tell us that we should not do this, who look at this regime and their determination to vilify and to repress opponents. People who honestly see the bloodlust and the coarseness and the bigotry in the very heart of this, and who say out of this same honest concern that the Trump regime is too vicious and we have no choice but to wait for elections or to fight the attacks as they come up and to hope for the best. But our answer is this: every great struggle everywhere has demanded courage and has demanded sacrifice. We cannot shrink from that. We will not be provoked into foolish or alienating actions, nor will we be cowed by the slander and vilification this regime wallows in and attempts to divide us against each other. There is way too much at stake for any of that. And we remember today the words of Pastor Martin Niemöller, the German clergyman who ended up in Hitler's concentration camp. Niemöller said, first they came for the communists, but I was not a communist, so I said nothing.